Hello, students and friends at home. Online with you is Ofojee, Eucharia, of Mathematics Department from St. Charles College, Onitsha. The subject is mathematics and the topic of the day is cosine rule. Before we move over to talk on the specific objectives, I want you to get the materials that you use for the lesson. And they are one, calculator, and the log table. These are the things you will use to calculate for the values and also the log table to find the angles in degree that you will use for the lesson. Thank you. Specific objectives. By the end of the lesson, the students will be able to 1. State cosine rule. 2. Solve problems using cosine rule. 3. Calculate angles in cosine rule. I want to flash you back before we look into the cosine rule. We have done about angles between 0 and 360 degrees, in which we have discussed in the junior class where the angles are located in the particular quadrants of the circle. And you can see that in the first quadrant of the lesson that you have in the junior class, we have sine, cosine, and tan to be positive in the first quadrant. When we get into the second quadrant, we have only sine to be positive, which means cos and tan are negative. So we are going to look into these two quadrants in discussing this cosine rule. Thank you. Introduction. Look at what we have there. Cosine rule, what it says. A. If we are looking for small letter a, remember that when we discussed sine rule, I told you that small letter a, small letter b, small letter c are the sides that we have in the triangles, while the capital letters are the angles we have in the triangles. And that's what we want to discuss. In number a, if you are asked to find the small letter a, we have the formula to be a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. When we want to find b, small letter b, we have it to be b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cos b. And the last is to find the small c. It is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cos c. And now we move into where we are. So we can say that in cosine rule above, we are expected to see a, b, and c, which we saw in our previous lesson that small letters indicate the side of the given triangle and capital letters indicate the angles of the given triangle. We are then going to use the above rule to solve problems. Example 1. Calculate the length in brackets, that is the side of the triangle below. The side we are looking for is little letter y, which it can be the same thing as little letter a, or little letter b, or little letter c. But here we use the letter y. If you are to find the small y, you look at the triangle, you can see that two sides are given and an angle. This is the main reason that we tell you that we are to use cosine rule, because we are given two sides and an angle, and we are asked to find the remaining side. So for us to find y, we have it to be y squared equals 7.23 squared plus 5.46 squared minus 2 times 7.23 times 5.46 cos 42.8 degrees. We now go over to multiply the squares. When we multiply 7.23 squared, we have 52.27. And when we multiply 5.46 squared, we have it to be 29.81. minus 2 times 7.23 times 5.43. If you multiply 2 with 7.23, we have it to be 14.46. Now, if you get to your log table as you having it in your hand, you see that cos 42.8 degrees will give us 0.6798. And when we multiply it with 5.46, we now multiply the other side together. The first side have plus. What is dividing them is minus. That first side will give us 82.08 minus the other side will give us 57.90. When we subtract it, we have it to be 24.18. And when we find the square root, we have y to be 4.58 cm to 2 decimal points. In example 2, we are also asked to find the little letter a, as we have seen in the first example. For us to find a, we have it to be a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos 60 degrees. If you put the angle of a, you have it 4 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 4 times 5 cos 60 degrees. 4 squared plus 5 squared will give us 41. And 2 times 4 times 5 cos 60. If you get to that log table, you see that cos 60 is half. And so when we subtract 20 from 41, we have it to be 21. And the square root of a will give us 4.58 cm to 2 decimal points. In example 3, that is where I flash you back to remember what sign cosine is in the quadrants. You saw that in that very second quadrant, that cosine is a negative. And that negative nature of it indicates that the angle there must be negative, even when you look for it in the 4-figure table or in your calculator. So we saw R to be 1120. If you get into the quadrants, you see that in the first quadrant, we have it to be between 0 and 90 degrees. Once it is above 90 degrees, it moves into the second quadrant. And in that second quadrant, remember, cosine is negative. And that's what we have there, 112 degrees. Our little p is 4.5 cm and little q is 5.3 cm. We are expected to find the value of small r. Now, if you get to that second quadrant, we have been flashed that very cosine must be what? Negative. And when we fix it in the formula, what we have is to be that little r square is 4.5 square plus 5.3 square minus 2 times 4.5 times 5.3 cos 112 degrees. Now, if you get into the calculator, you will see that when you look for cos 112 degrees, it must give you minus 0.3746. If you look at the next step, you see that minus sign changed to what? Positive sign, because that minus 47.7, when it multiplied minus 0.3746, minus and minus automatically turn to plus. And that's why that step gave us 48.34 plus 47.7 times 0.3746. And so when we multiply 47.7 with 0.3746, we have it to be 17.87. And that gives us 66.21. When we look for the little r, we find the square root, and it gave us 8.1 cm to 1 decimal point. In our last lesson with sine rule, we saw that we only use a particular formula to find both sides and the angles, but it's not like that in cosine rule. In cosine rule, there's a way you can find the angle and there's a way you find the sides. And that is what we have seen in the previous examples. To find A, which is angle A, it is B square plus C square minus A square all over 2BC. And to find angle B is A square plus C square minus B square over 2AC. And to find angle C, it is A square plus B square minus C square over 2AB. We are now going to use this formula to find the following. In example 4, we are asked to calculate the angles of the triangle below, which means we are expected to talk about the 3 angles. Now, you saw the capital A, capital B, and capital C. We have seen previously that the side facing capital A is small a. The side facing the capital C is the small c. The side facing capital B is the small b. You must pay attention to this, because if you miss any of the side, you will fail what you are solving. So, I will advise you to always label it as you see it, A, C, and B, so that you now know what to use at each formula. Now, we want to find cos A first. If you look at there, you will see that small a is 5, small b is 2, and small c is 4. So that when you are fixing it, you will be sure of what you are doing. And when we fix the small a is 4 square, when we fix the small b is 2 square, and then when we fix the small c is 5 square, all over 2 times a times b, which is 4 and 2, and it is 20 minus 25 over 16. When you divide it, it will give you minus 5 over 16, which you must change to decimal fraction if you want to find the correct answer. The answer must be in decimal fraction, because when you get to the 4-figure table, we have everything there in decimal. When you pick in the calculator, you also have the answer. And when you have that, you change minus 4 over 16, it will give you minus 0.3125. Automatically, this will give you a sign that that cos must be in the second quadrant, because it is now above 90 degrees. That's why it is putting minus. And so, when we get to that, this thing you saw, we call it cos inverse. We are looking for the angle. So cos inverse minus 0.3125 will give us 108.2 degrees. To find cos B, you still remember that B is 2, C is 4, A is 5. And when you fix it, what you get at last will be 37 over 40. You automatically change it to decimal so that you can go to the 4-figure table. You can also use your calculator. And when we divided 37 with 40, we have it to be 0.9250. Then we look for cos inverse 0.9250. And that gives us 22.3 degrees. Now, you don't have the need to go over to find C, because in your junior class, we taught you and you knew that the sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So that when 2 angles of the triangle is given to you, you have known the third one. And that is what we have to apply to find our angle C. We have seen that A is 108.2 degrees, and our B is 22.3 degrees. So for us to find C, we add 108.2 degrees to 22.3 degrees, and it gave us 130.5 degrees. When we subtract it from 180, what you will get will be 49.5 degrees. And my students, if you add 108.2 degrees, 22.3 degrees, and 49.5 degrees, you see automatically it must give you 180 degrees, which will tell you that the answer is correct. We have come to the end of the lesson, but before that, you have to look into what I have taught you. But remember that you must know the cosine rule off by head. You must know the formula one by one so that you won't miss it. And you must remember what small and what capital indicates in the triangle so that when you are solving it, you won't have any problem. Now, take the evaluation test. Solve the triangle completely. What does that mean? You look for the little letter A, you look for angle B, and you look for angle A. And that is what the evaluation test. It will enable you to know whether you have understood how to find the side and whether you have understood how to find the angles. Thank you, and God bless you. You submit your evaluation test through the WhatsApp number 0703 53675 700. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.